Well, our special guest on NDTV today is the chairman of the Congress's Manifesto Committee, former Union and Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram. Thank you, Mr. Chidambaram, for speaking to us. The Congress launched its manifesto today. A number of key issues that were flagged there, including, of course, the NYAY scheme, women's safety, rural distress, 150 days for Manrega, above 100 days. Farmers who can't pay back loans will no longer be, slapped with criminal cases, etc. Was there a very deliberate attempt when you drafted this manifesto to ensure that the narrative stayed focused on bread and butter issues?
See, I belong to a rural constituency, and I've traveled extensively in both cities as well as rural areas. At the ground level, 99 out of 100 people are concerned about jobs, concerned about farmers' distress, concerned about women's and children's security. These are the bread and butter issues. And therefore, we decided, after hearing the voices of the people in about 175 consultations, this is what we heard. So we have reflected exactly what we have heard. This is not the product of 5 people sitting in a closed room. This is exactly the voices of the people of India.
Is there a conscious effort, though, because you made a mention of this at the manifesto release, that it's time to shift the focus and the narrative back to jobs, to farmers? And are you worried that that narrative is running away from you a little bit with the Prime Minister's campaign, which is so focused on national security and Pakistan and terrorism and so on?
See, the Prime Minister is desperately trying to wrench the narrative from our hands. Over the last few days, he only talks about national security, Pakistan, how India's missile shot down an outdated small satellite, whatever. Now, those are issues in which there is no division in the country. But he refuses to answer questions on jobs, on farmers' distress, on education, on healthcare, on reviving SMEs, MSMEs. He refuses to answer questions. So we are now bringing back these issues to focus, and we will demand in every meeting, every workers' meeting, every wayside meeting, every public meeting, rally, we will demand that the Prime Minister answer these questions, address these issues. How long can he run away from addressing real issues?
Are you saying that there's a conscious attempt by the Congress not to be drawn into a debate with Mr. Modi on national security and nationalism issues?
There's no debate on that. Between 2004 and 2014, India was very secure. There was no war. The one attack that took place in November 2008, after 2008 until 2014, there was no attack on Indian soil which was traced back to Pakistani militants. So we were quite secure in those 10 years. Remember, the only war we fought in the last 30 years was the one under Mr. Vajpayee. There was no war under the Congress government. So we want to focus on the real issues while the Prime Minister is running away from real issues and trying to erect a ghost and trying to slay that ghost.
Well, coming back to some specific issues in the manifesto, and the NYAY scheme is obviously high up there after Rahul Gandhi's announcement. Now, there's still a considerable amount of debate amongst economists and commentators about whether this scheme will be in addition to existing subsidies or other subsidies will be scrapped. Now, you've actually gone on record to say that no, those subsidies that were brought in for a specific economic objective will continue to remain there. How would you address the concerns then that some have that this will really hurt the government's budget?
We'll see as we go along. When Mr. Narendra Modi, candidate, announced he will put 15 lakh rupees in the bank account of every citizen, there is 100 crore bank accounts were there in 2014. And that translates to 1,500 lakh crore. Where was the wisdom of the BJP leaders? Why did they not question him? Where will you get 1,500 lakh crore? Nobody asked him the question. So why suddenly ask a question when we are targeting the poorest 20%? I'll give you numbers. The bullet train costs 1 lakh crore. So far, as we speak, the write-off, actual write-off in the resolved insolvency cases is 84,000 crore. The unresolved cases will entail a liability of about 2,20,000 crore. I mean, nobody asked the math on that. I'm telling you, this is doable. This is no different from the calculation made by Dr. Arvind Subramaniam in the Economic Survey. He pegged his scheme at 1.2% of GDP.
And this is a bit more than that.
We are pegging our scheme at about 1.3% of GDP or 1.4% of GDP when we roll it out for the bottom 10%. And when fully rolled out, the GDP would have increased, remember. When fully rolled out, it will be about 1.5, 1.4%, 1.5% of GDP, let's say. So what is the difference between Mr. Arvind Subramaniam's math and our math?
No, I think the question is that will you be able to afford both existing subsidies and the NYAY scheme?
The answer is, these questions have to be answered with an economic mind and a moral heart.
So what does your economic mind say?
My economic mind says, if we raise more resources, more efficient tax administration.
So higher taxes?
No, I said more efficient tax administration. I give you our word, the tax burden of the middle class, the average taxpayer will not increase.
Will not increase.
Will not increase. Average taxpayer, the middle class taxpayer will not increase. But there are other ways to raise resources.
So
in fact, the government of India's resources do not rise at a pace at which the resources of some individuals rise. Therefore, there are ways to raise resources, number one. Number two, there is huge scope for rationalization without touching any subsidy that was given to meet a specific socio-economic objective. Let me repeat that. A subsidy that has been given to meet a specific socio-economic objective will not be touched. For example, ICDS. Why should we touch ICDS? Midday meal scheme. Why should we touch midday meal scheme? These are specifically to address issues of nutrition. Therefore, we will not touch those subsidies, but there is scope for rationalization. And we will create the fiscal space. We will create the fiscal space for implementing the scheme.
It's interesting because you said the middle class will not be burdened. You're saying that they will not see an increase in taxation. So can we expect the rich tax there to go up?
Who are you speaking for, I want to know?
Well, you already have a rich tax. There's a certain bracket above which people are paying more tax. So is that going to go up? Is that one way of raising money?
We're not talking anything about taxes. You wanted an assurance that the average taxpayer's burden will not increase, and I've given you that assurance. There are ways in which resources can be raised. There are ways in which expenditure can be rationalized. There are ways in which fiscal space can be created. How did we implement Maganrega? By creating the fiscal space. How did we write off the farmers' debts in 2008-9? By creating the fiscal space. We can create this fiscal space. And remember, this is a program that will be rolled out in phases. It's not going to come on the first day. It will be rolled out in phases.
So not an election jumla, as the opposition seems to suggest.
Well,
Mr. Jaitley says it's all a bluff, that they're actually doing much more for the poor in terms of numbers.
Very well. If you're doing much more for the poor will support you. Why are you afraid of the scheme? Why are you gone ballistic about the scheme?
Well, let me turn back to the campaign though, and Mr. Modi's sort of brought in a new dimension in the last 24 hours, and that is this whole attack on the Congress on, Hindu terror and the Hindu terror remark. And he says Hindus will not forgive the Congress for what it did by coining this term and persecuting Hindus, etc. How will the Congress sort of counter that narrative that he's now trying to build?
See, this is the old thing that they tried 5 years ago and 10 years ago. People are tired of listening to these arguments. The fact is that there were 3 terrorist incidents targeting Muslim places of worship, 2, and the Samjhauta Express. Makkah Masjid and Ajmer Dargah. The point is, somebody must have caused those terrorist attacks. Are you saying that they didn't take place or nobody was responsible for that? The professional investigating agencies investigated it. Yes, many were acquitted, but if I recall, 2 people have been convicted in the Ajmer Dargah case. I don't know whether they have filed further appeals. I don't know. But the fact is, this is a matter for the investigating agency and the courts to decide whether A is guilty or B is guilty. Let me assume that all the accused were not guilty. Then go and find the real guilty persons. Unless you say no such attack took place. Besides, remember, 3 persons are still absconding. 3 persons named as accused are absconding. Find them. Why are you not finding the absconding accused? So the story is not yet over. All I want is, there were terrorist attacks. Find the guilty and punish the guilty. Don't tell us nobody is guilty.
No,
This
Hindu
like
is guilty. That's the
Find out
difference.
who's guilty. Find out who's guilty and punish him or her. This is like that phrase that was current a few years ago. Nobody killed Jessica Lal. How do we accept that?
You were the Home Minister when this term saffron terror was coined way back in 2010, and you in fact had, I remember at a police function, raised it, and it hit the headlines at that time and became a bit of a controversy. Do you still stand by that phraseology that there is saffron terror or Hindu terror?
That was a phrase used by someone earlier, which I did use in a speech. But then my party said, don't use it anymore, and we stopped using it. That's a non-issue. The fact is, any terror group is a terror group. Its religious affiliation is irrelevant. Terrorists can belong to this religion or that religion. In the past, terror groups have been identified as carrying on a religious crusade. We are not concerned about their religion. We are concerned about punishing those who are really guilty of causing the terrorist attack.
So you're moving away from the Hindu terror
No,
label?
I said I used it once. It had been used before. I used it once. And my party said, let's not use it. And I said, oh, all right, we won't use it. But that doesn't take away the fact that somebody caused these attacks. And I'm only telling Mr. Modi, if these are not the persons who've been acquitted are not the persons, fine. Find the real persons and punish them.
You know, the BJP is essentially citing the acquittal of the Samjhauta blast accused recently by the court as bolstering their case that there is no Hindu terror. Now, let me ask you about the NIA. Here, the court itself said that the NIA didn't present the best evidence. It didn't allow the most independent witnesses to be cross-examined, etc. Now, I'm just a bit confused. Do you think the court was referring to the NIA's investigation in the UPA or the NDA?
There's no such thing as NIA's investigation in UPA or NDA. The case was investigated by the NIA when the UPA was in office, and the investigation continued when the NDA took office. The evidence was presented when the NDA is in office, and the court's indictment of the NIA is a matter of shame.
What does it tell you about the premier investigating agency then? Has it become politicized? Have terror investigations become politicized?
We'll find out in 2 months why the NIA investigation and prosecution collapsed.
After the elections.
We'll find out in 2 months. Someday the truth will have to come out.
Let me also ask you about this whole controversy or this chatter about Rahul Gandhi contesting a seat from the south, from Wayanad in Kerala. It's really upset the left, which has said that this sort of dents any attempt at opposition unity. You guys didn't go for an alliance in Bengal. You're not serious about fighting the BJP. Why couldn't Rahul have contested, say, against the BJP in Karnataka, where the BJP at least has a presence? Why Wayanad? What would you say to the left's sort of reaction to this?
20 seats in Kerala, in all 20 seats, the Congress-led UDF is contesting the Marxist-led LDF. In all 20 seats, the LDF is contesting the UDF. Mr. Rahul Gandhi is a candidate of the UDF. In 19 other seats, If UDF candidates are contesting the LDF, why should they get upset if the 20th candidate of the UDF contesting the LDF happens to be Mr. Rahul Gandhi? He's just one among 20 candidates of the UDF contesting the LDF. Well, what is new about it?
But why Wayanad? Does it really actually have an impact in the rest of the South?
We considered 3 seats. One was Wayanad, one was Shivaganga, and one was in Karnataka. And finally, after considering various factors, including other candidates who may be aspiring for that seat. See, please remember, the Wayanad seat is vacant where the sitting MP passed away. The Wayanad seat, in that sense, it's vacant. Whereas in other seats, there are claimants, there are aspirants, let's say. He could have chosen any seat, but finally we chose. Well, if we choose another seat, they will say you're contesting that seat. I mean, this is neither here nor there. These arguments are neither here nor there.
There is also growing commentary in the last couple of weeks, especially as people are getting ground reports from UP and elsewhere. A sense that the Congress isn't fighting to defeat Mr. Modi in this election. That
what is this manifesto?
That it's about 2022 in UP and 2024, and that's why, for instance, I'm just giving, you can counter this, but this theory that by contesting all the seats in UP, you're actually hurting the BSP, SP more than you're hurting the BJP.
I don't know what kind of plea is this. We tried for an alliance with the BSP and SP. They turned us down. Remember that. Remember that fact. They turned us down. We waited long enough. We made overtures. We said we must have as broad-based a coalition as possible. They turned us down. Once they turn us down, what is the Congress party supposed to do? Pack up and leave UP? Can we do that? We can't.
Now you're eating into their votes, and they're the ones taking on the BJP.
I can turn around and say they are eating into our votes. What kind of an argument is this? The moment they don't want a coalition with the Congress party will contest those seats and garner as many votes as possible in order to win. We may win a seat, we may lose a seat. But the votes we garner can't be described as votes eating into their tally. I can turn around and say, your votes are eating into my tally.
Well, I mean, it's not that the Congress has the same presence in, say, UP the
So
way that the SP does.
Is that your case? We should simply pack up and go.
But I think the argument being made is the Congress can either choose to defeat Mr. Modi and come together with the opposition, or it can revive itself. It can't do both at the same time.
The same argument should be posed to Ms. Mayawati and Mr. Akhilesh Yadav. You can choose to defeat Mr. Modi, or you can choose to exclude the Congress. The same thing can be said to them, and I think you should tell them the same thing.
Finally, Mr. Chidambaram, let me ask you on the election narrative, on the national security narrative. Now, national security is important. I think to a lot of people it's an issue that does matter. And having been the Home Minister of this country, post Balakot, post Pulwama, you had another car exploding on the Jammu-Srinagar highway just the other day. These are actually matters of serious concern. And one gets the sense now that if questions are raised on intelligence failures or any of that, you're immediately sort of branded anti-national for raising those questions. Is the Congress going to continue to raise those issues, or are you deliberately sort of again staying away from that narrative because in a sense you can't win with Mr. Modi on that, for want of a better word?
We can't win. This is a democracy. People will ask questions. What did Mr. Modi do when the terror attack in Mumbai took place? Right in the middle of the terror attack.
He went to the Trident.
He went to the Trident Hotel, stood there and criticized the government of India. Why don't you play those clips on your channel? You should play those clips and say, what was Mr. Modi doing between November 26 and November 30 of 2008? Questions will be asked. Please remember, what are the questions we're asking? If there is an intelligence failure, we will ask the question. You have to answer whether there was an intelligence failure or not. Was this question not asked when the Mumbai terror attack took place? Opposition parties said quite emphatically this is a case of intelligence failure. And there was an intelligence failure. In fact, I admitted to that after I took over as Home Minister. Questions will be asked. That doesn't mean we are anti-national. If we are anti-national for asking questions, what would you describe Mr. Modi when he went before Trident Hotel in Mumbai? You should use the same phrase against him. Of course, if you say that phrase...
Well, I'm not using it.
If
I'm called anti-national every day.
I'm asking you to use it. Of course, the only danger is they will slap a case against you on your channel. That she called me anti-national 8 years ago, whatever.
Well,
the point is, Mr. Modi is running away from real issues. He is running a fear campaign. We are as much concerned about national security and internal security as we are with other issues. Our record is, in the 2004-2014 period, the nation was safe. There were incidents on internal security, I don't deny that, but we dealt with them. The nation was safe. There was no war. The nation was safe. And under a Congress government, the nation will be safe. But all right, having said that, come back, Mr. Modi, to the real issues. Come back to jobs, come back to agriculture, come back to education, come back to healthcare, and talk about these issues.
You actually said today that more than 4 crore jobs have been lost.
4 crore, 70 lakhs.
What is the exact blueprint the Congress has for job creation? Can you just give us some detail on that?
We have a section on jobs. In fact, if I remember...
One is on the government job vacancies that you said you'll fill.
No, I'll give you the whole lot of it. First is the government job vacancies in central government and all allied organizations and in the state governments. The second is that we will expand massively the education and health sectors, which means more doctors, more nurses, more paramedics, more technicians. In Delhi alone, several thousand jobs are vacant in schools and in hospitals. Then, what we are saying is, we will allow MSMEs to grow rapidly so that they can create jobs. 90% of jobs are in the MSME sector. We are promising what we call regulatory forbearance, which means for 3 years.
No permits needed.
New MSMEs require no permissions whatsoever. Old MSMEs also, from 1st of April 2019, do not have to comply with any of these laws unless they wish to comply. So they'll have regulatory forbearance. And then we say we will have the definition of MSMEs being changed. So far, the definition micro, small, medium is linked to capital. We are now linking it to employment. Those who employ...
Okay, an X number of people and above, etc.
And then we say we will give fiscal incentives to businesses that employ a certain percentage of women. Exports create jobs. In this government, BJP government, exports have been flat. Just look at the numbers. They have not crossed 315 billion in any of the 5 years.
So this is the
And lastly, tourism creates jobs. And we have said there will be lower rates of taxation for tourism-related business and no application fee. No fee will be charged for tourist visas.
So I have to ask you before we go. We had that NSSO jobs report, which the government's not been trying to, it's been trying to hide from the rest of the world, which talked about unemployment being at a 45-year high. What did you think of the CII report that came out recently that actually said that because of the MSME sector, employment has actually, this has been generated because of that? It's the complete opposite to what every other
So tell us where the jobs are. I invite the CII leadership, I invite the CII council leadership to take me, or I will take them. Let's travel to the industrial hubs of India, Tirupur, Moradabad, Jalandhar. Let's go to these hubs and tell me where the jobs are. I have personally visited Tirupur 3 times in the last year. Jobs have been destroyed. The Minister of Industry told the Tamil Nadu legislature that thanks to demonetization and GST, 50,000 MSMEs were closed in Tamil Nadu alone and 5 lakh jobs were lost.
So it doesn't add up.
So what does the CII Tamil Nadu Council say about that? Why did they not issue a statement refuting the Tamil Nadu minister? The CII today is a shadow of what it was when we started liberalization. I'm very sorry about that.
All right, Mr. Chidambaram, thank you for giving us some insight into the Congress's manifesto today and the way the campaign is going. Good luck to you.
Thank you.